You guys, about 5 of you guys changed your names, and I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I don't like it. I'm not a fan. I opened up my fantasy. I took a look at the names. I couldn't really tell who the fuck was who because I saw all these fucking goofy names all over the place, and I said, no, I don't like it. So you know what I've chosen to do? I've chosen to rank your names from 1 to number 5 since there are 5 teams that chose to spontaneously change their team. You guys just do this every year. You do this every year. Change is good. Change is good. I get change. Change is good because you have to change the morale of your team after you have had a failed season. I don't think anyone has a good season and changes their name. So I guess you have to rid yourself of all the horrible moves that you made, all the terrible decisions, and most of all, you have to rid yourself of that feeling that you felt when I stuck my dick in your asses one more time. So let's get to that list. At number 5, we've got New York to Cali by Pedro. Boring. Who gives a shit? Who cares? Who cares? And plus, I told you this, Pedro. I told you that I don't like the disrespect of putting New York in your team name. First of all, you don't live here. Second of all, we had this talk about 4 or 5 years ago when I believe we had some stipulation in a week. It was just a regular game, and I was just like, hey, whoever wins takes the name, and obviously I beat you, so you took it out of your team, and then I carried it, and now you bought it back. So I'm just gonna take this as blatant disrespect, Pedro, and I don't appreciate it. At number 4, we've got I Run This League by Ed. Inaccurate. Completely inaccurate. You don't run this team administratively. You don't run this team because you win the most. You don't set up any drafts. You're not a commissioner. You're not a co-commissioner. It doesn't make any sense. How do you run this league? How do you run this league? Hold on. Make another video. Tell me. Make another video, Ed. Tell me how you run this league. Okay. Oh, okay. That's what I thought. It's inaccurate, so it's not a good name. At number 3, we have The Green Ranger by Orlando. This one I really don't get either. I mean, you're the Green Ranger. I don't know why. Why are you the green? You were the Ninja Turtles. Is this continuing the green theme? Is it like I'm no longer into the collectivism? I'm into the individual now. Now it's all about the Green Ranger. And even if that's the case, why call yourself the second strongest Power Ranger? Like, why not just go White Ranger? Or were you not aware that the White Ranger was stronger than the Green Ranger? And the other thing is, too, Power Rangers is sort of like a low-rent, guilty pleasure children's show. So you take the number 3 spot. I think you should have just went with the White Ranger because you're white. At number 2, we have Thanksgiving. Now, this one is number 2 because Paul's Paul. That's true. Paul's Paul, and I know there are a few slurs that you guys are muttering under your breath. A lot of you guys don't like Paul. You send me text messages. All you want to do is talk about Paul all day. Some of you call me. You want to spend 5 hours on the phone and talk about Paul. And frankly, I don't have time for it. Okay. Not anymore. I don't. But he named his team Thanksgiving. And what I can appreciate about this is that Paul is referencing a movie that is intentionally bad. Now, Paul is, of course, a owner who at this point we can only assume that he is being intentionally bad at his fantasy team. So it makes a lot of sense. It's very cohesive to the message of the team. So keep that name Thanksgiving. Keep it, Paul. It's going to work wonders for you. And at number 1, we got Llegó Papi. Now, Andy's old name was in Cyril Marble's Tanaka, and it's consistent with what Andy does because Andy has no business naming his team in Cyril Marble's Tanaka since it has nothing to do with baseball, with football and everything to do with baseball. So it wasn't connected to fantasy. And Andy is actually an owner who has no business being in this league. So it makes a lot of sense that he would call his team Llegó Papi because it is sort of a statement. I think if any of you guys are changing your names because you want to make a statement, Andy made the best statement. Llegó Papi. That's it. Simple. Dad's here. Except Andy can't call himself a fucking dad because he hasn't fucking done anything. If you're a dad, you're a deadbeat dad. All right. This is your week 1 recap. How are you guys? I know you so eagerly await these recaps. You just, because you're all masochists, you just want me to beat up on you, and I'm willing to beat up on you if you let me. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to let you know the basics here as far as the highs and the lows of week one, because obviously it's week one, so there's not a lot to talk about. So for this week, we got a few surprises, right? I mean, we got Joe, who was the highest scoring team with 128 points, defeating Eric 128-92. Joe got a phenomenal performance from Alvin Kamara, 33 points from him. Tom Brady put up a solid 21 points. We have 18 from Melvin Gordon, who I don't like picking up Melvin Gordon because something about him tells me that he's just going to get injured soon, but whatever. He scored 18 points against a sort of soft Kansas City defense and 17 points from his own defense, the Ravens. And on the other side, Eric with 19 points from Russell Wilson, 13 from Ezekiel Elliott, 16 from Keenan Allen, but not much else from any other position. So he loses with 92 points. On the other side, the worst team of the week was Orlando, losing to NY to Cali by a final score of 100-44. Orlando embarrassed himself with a 11 from Deshaun Watson, fives all across the board, like 4, 5s, and 6s. You got a -7 from the Saints defense. It was a terrible week for Orlando. So the Gonzalez brothers are polar opposites as far as the fantasy league starts out. And you can tell it's week one, right? You can tell it's week one because if you can say that Joe is the best team in the league, which technically right now he is, this tells you something about the state of the league. It tells you something about where we're. No, I'm just kidding. It's just week one. Everyone has their shining moment in week one. And speaking of the divisions, Joe is at top of what is now called the G.I. Joe division, a division which consists of Pedro, who is also 1-0 with his victory, Jago Papi at 1-0 with his victory, Ewok Rape 0-1, and the Green Ranger 0-1. And on the other side, we have the Thundercat division, which is the toughest division of them all. Of course, you put me in any division, and it's going to be the toughest motherfucking division. I run this league at number 1. At number 2, we've got me with a record of 1-0, and 3, 4, and 5, Jay, Hensel, and Paul, all starting off with a record of 0-1. Now, it's going to be tougher to get to the playoffs because this is a tougher division. The commish so strategically placed himself on the easier division. It'd be pretty laughable if he doesn't end up making the playoffs and he's the one who orchestrates it. Technically, Ed, he runs this league. So I think you should give your name to him. So now that I've told you the highs and the lows, let's get to the games. I defeated Jay by a final score of 88-86. I got to tell you this, Jay. I got to be completely honest with you. I joked with you in the chat. I told you thank you. Just a second, I have to get a drink of water. I got to be honest with you. I don't know what the point of drafting James Conner when you were very aware of Le'Veon Bell's holdout situation. So obviously you picked up his backup for a reason. What was the point of picking him up with the 14th pick if you weren't going to play him over some of these other players that you have here? I mean, I get the fact that you have Delvin Cook in there, that you had Jay Ajayi, but was Juju Smith-Schuster really going to outshine what's not a running back by committee at all in Pittsburgh? Like whoever the back is, he's getting about 25 to 30 carries. Like, did it make any sense at all for you to leave him on the bench? James Gordon scored 28 points, 31 carries, 135 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, the fact that Jay left him on the bench is totally fucking stupid. He could have beat me easily. And he was also held back by the fact that he started Matthew Stafford. And Jay's done this a few times over the years. He's drafted Matthew Stafford or picked him up and played him. And I don't know why anybody plays Matthew Stafford anymore. In a 10-team league, I have no clue why people still play Matt Stafford, why people still play what the fuck is the name of this drunk, most likely to say the word nigga, Phillip Rivers. I have no clue why anybody would play either one of those players in a 10-team league. There's just way too much talent out there. On the other side, I got 19 points from Alex Smith. I got 10 points from Lamar Miller, 17 points from Julio Jones, and a solid performance by my defense. So Jay was defeated 88-86. We also have Ed defeating Paul 124-77. Ed got the best performance of the week, period, by any player, with Tyreek Hill, who got 7 catches, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns, 34 total points. He got 18 from Saquon Barkley, 20 from Joe Mixon, 8 pathetic points by Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, let me say this to you, Ed. Now, I noticed when you did your video, you mentioned that everybody made fun of you about drafting Drew Brees. That's completely false. No one laughed at you because you picked Drew Brees. Here's what you did. With the 7th pick in your draft, you selected Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, that tells me a few things, Ed. Just previously to that, there were, I think, 3 quarterbacks selected. I think Joe had selected Tom Brady. Then after that, Andy had chosen Aaron Rodgers, and Orlando tried to secure his combo with DeAndre Hopkins by picking up Deshaun Watson. Now, you panicked. And you panicked because you don't know this league well enough. You panicked because you thought that any of these motherfuckers were going to give a shit about Jimmy G in the 7th round, and that is so incorrect. To choose Jimmy G in the 7th round it means that you didn't do your research on any players whatsoever. And when I mean research, I don't mean, sitting around and looking at fantasy information for 8 hours. I just mean just half an hour of investing time into quarterbacks. You would have known that Jimmy G was going to go a lot later, and you didn't have to sell that high. You didn't have to buy that high on Jimmy G. And then after that, with your 7th pick, you chose Drew Brees. Now, that's obviously stupid, and it manifested itself in week 1 because you, Ed, if I could again use another Bane line against someone else this week, I'll use one against you, except I'll do it in Bane's voice. You fight like a young man, nothing held back. Is admirable, but mistaken. You fight like a young man, Ed. Nothing held back. It's admirable, but it's mistaken. You chose to put Jimmy G in there because you wanted to prove something, but what you didn't understand is that you put Jimmy G in there against the Minnesota defense and left Drew Brees on the bench when he was going up against Tampa Bay. It's retarded. You wanted to prove some point, and even in your video, it made no sense because, number one, no one had shat on you because you drafted. No one would shit on anyone for picking Drew Brees. But we will shit on you, or I will shit on you, if you draft Jimmy G so early. It's not because you drafted Jimmy G. No. It's not because you drafted Jimmy G. It's because you picked him 7th. If you had picked Jimmy G 7th and picked no other quarterback, it would have made more sense because then it said, okay, Ed's putting all his chips into Jimmy Garoppolo. Then it's like, okay, go nuts. But when you pick Drew Brees, it's like, well, wait a minute. Then what was the sense of doing it? You're stupid, Ed. This is basically what I'm saying. You're dumb. Okay, you're dumb. So as I said, Ed defeated Paul by a final score of 124-77. Paul got 19 points from Kirk Cousins, 20 points from Mike Evans, and he continues to be romantic. He's gotten Mike Evans like 3 straight seasons. Mike Evans did his thing now, but watch him fucking do shit for the remainder of the season. We also had Andy win 98-78 against Hensel. Hensel made the worst pick in draft history. Now, before the draft, I'll be honest with you guys. Before the draft, I spoke on the phone with Hensel, and we were just throwing around a few players' names, and I mentioned to him, I said, well, one thing you have to pay attention to with Le'Veon Bell is that he hasn't been paid yet. And I don't know if Hensel took this sort of information as me trying to fuck with him, by lying to him or something, but he still chose to go with Le'Veon Bell, which is fine. I mean, look, if Le'Veon Bell is going to miss the first 3 or 4 games in the season, I'm the first person to tell you that shit really doesn't matter. I took I picked up Carson Wentz, knowing that Wentz probably wasn't going to play the first season, the first month of the year. So I don't care about that. I think the importance is in the, third, fourth quarter of the season. That's when shit really matters. So it's pretty much irrelevant if you lose your first 3 games. But I mean, when you had Todd Gurley to choose from, I mean, that's just a fucking fail. So Hensel loses 98-78, and if Le'Veon Bell doesn't play for another 2 weeks, I'm gonna fucking put Hensel through the fucking meat grinder. So those were your games for week 1, and now let's move on to the week 2 matchups. Of course, I have Ed. We have Hensel going up against Jay. We have Green Rangers going up against Thanksgiving. Joe going up against Andy. Eric going up against NY2 Cali. So those are pretty much your matchups. Ed, we face each other yet again. And I'm also going to tell you this, Ed. I'm going to have to correct you. In your video, when you, before you said what you said, you were totally incorrect too, by the way. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would I give you my 10th and 11th pick? It makes no sense. That's what happens when you're the champion. You get leverage so I can offer you one of my picks. You don't just get to count my draft picks and that's not how business deals work. You can't just look at somebody and say, well, look at your net worth. I deserve this much because it's like, no. I have 2 picks because I have 2 picks. I have leverage. I can afford to just give you one. I have 2, you have 1. It's simple mathematics. You just don't get to take both of my picks. And plus, you don't get to act like you really care about draft picks when you obviously did the retarded Jimmy G thing. But the thing that I want to correct you on is the fact that when you said I'm the defending champion, you put like air quotes in the air. There's no air quotes, my friend. I'm not the quote unquote defending champion. I am the fucking defending champion. There's no air quotes. But you want to know what there's air quotes for, Ed? There's air quotes when you say, I run this league. That's when you use air quotes, my friend. So I just needed to correct you. So this was your week 1 recap. And as always, may your quarterbacks get hurt before they leave the locker room. May your running backs pull their hamstrings. And may your wide receivers get arrested for marijuana possession. Go fuck yourselves.